When a massive tornado touched down on the Texas highway, Elon Musk's Tesla was directly in its path with nowhere to run. What happened next would prove that sometimes the most unlikely heroes emerge from the most desperate situations, and one farmer's split-second decision would change both their lives forever. The afternoon sun blazed mercilessly over the endless Texas landscape as Elon Musk's white Tesla Model S Plaid cruised down State Highway 287, somewhere between Amarillo and Wichita Falls. The car's advanced autopilot system maintained a steady 75 miles per hour while Elon took a video conference call with his SpaceX engineering team about the upcoming Mars mission timeline. The vehicle's climate control kept the interior at a perfect 72 degrees, a stark contrast to the oppressive 98-degree heat outside. "The heat shield calculations look solid," Elon said into his phone's speaker, reviewing technical documents on the Tesla's massive touchscreen. "But I want to run additional simulations on the atmospheric entry angle. Mars's atmosphere is only 1% as dense as Earth's, so our margin for error is practically zero." The engineering team's voices crackled through the car's premium audio system as they discussed trajectory calculations and fuel consumption rates. Elon was completely absorbed in the technical details, his mind racing through the complex physics that would eventually carry humans to another planet. The monotonous Texas landscape rolled by unnoticed, mile after mile of cotton fields, oil derricks, and the occasional ranch house sitting in isolation under the vast sky. What Elon didn't notice was the wall of dark clouds building rapidly on the western horizon, moving toward the highway with unnatural speed. The National Weather Service had issued a severe thunderstorm warning 30 minutes earlier, but Elon's phone was on Do Not Disturb mode to avoid interruptions during the important call. 65-year-old Jake Williams was checking his cotton crop about 2 miles south of Highway 287 when he first spotted the ominous cloud formation. A lifetime of farming in Tornado Alley had taught him to read the sky like most people read books, and what he saw made his blood run cold. The supercell thunderstorm was massive, with a distinctive rotating wall cloud that could only mean one thing: tornado conditions were developing fast. Jake's weathered hands moved quickly across his smartphone screen, checking the radar. The storm was moving northeast at 45 miles per hour, putting it on a direct collision course with the highway. He had maybe 15 minutes before the worst of it hit, and anyone caught on that exposed stretch of road would be in mortal danger. "Should have stayed home today," Jake muttered to himself, climbing into his battered 2010 Ford F-150. The truck had seen better days, with rust spots along the fenders and a windshield cracked from years of hailstorms, but its V8 engine was still reliable. Jake had been planning to head into town for supplies, but the approaching storm changed his priorities. He needed to get to his storm shelter, and fast. As Jake drove toward Highway 287, he kept one eye on the sky and one on his phone's weather radar. The storm was intensifying rapidly, showing the classic hook echo pattern that meteorologists associated with tornadic activity. He had lived through dozens of severe storms over the decades, but this one looked particularly dangerous. Back on the highway, Elon was still deep in conversation about rocket propulsion systems when the first drops of rain began hitting his windshield. The Tesla's sensors automatically activated the wipers, and Elon glanced up briefly at the darkening sky. "Looks like I'm driving into some weather," he told his team. "Let me call you back in an hour when I'm through this." As he ended the call, Elon noticed how quickly the conditions were deteriorating. The temperature had dropped 15 degrees in just minutes, and the wind was beginning to rock even his heavy Tesla. He touched the screen to check the weather, but the car's cellular connection was becoming spotty as the storm interfered with the signal towers. Within minutes, what had started as light rain became a torrential downpour. The Tesla's advanced traction control system maintained grip on the increasingly slick asphalt, but visibility was dropping rapidly. Elon reduced his speed to 45 miles per hour, then 35, as the rain became so heavy that the windshield wipers could barely keep up. That's when the hail started. The first stones were marble-sized, pinging against the Tesla's aluminum body panels with sharp metallic sounds. Within seconds, they grew to golf ball size, hammering the car with devastating force. The noise inside the cabin became deafening as hundreds of ice balls per minute pelted the vehicle. Elon could feel the Tesla shuddering under the relentless barrage. "This is bad," he said aloud, gripping the steering wheel tighter. The car's autopilot had disengaged automatically due to the severe weather conditions, leaving him to navigate manually through the whiteout conditions. He could barely see 20 feet ahead, and the hail was getting larger. Then he saw it, Through a brief gap in the storm, Elon caught sight of something that made his heart stop. A massive, dark funnel cloud touching down about a mile to his west, moving directly toward the highway. The tornado was enormous, easily a quarter-mile wide at its base, and it was churning up everything in its path. Debris was already visible in the funnel. Trees, pieces of buildings, and what looked like vehicles. Elon's Tesla was trapped on a perfectly straight section of highway with nowhere to go. Open fields stretched for miles on both sides, offering no shelter whatsoever. The nearest overpass was at least 10 miles ahead, and the tornado would reach the highway long before he could get there. Behind him, the road was equally exposed. Jake Williams saw the tornado at almost the same moment, and his farmer's instincts kicked in immediately. He was about a half-mile from the highway when he spotted the white Tesla struggling through the hail, moving far too slowly to outrun the approaching twister. "Damn fool's gonna get himself killed," Jake muttered, pressing the accelerator harder. His old F-150 bounced and lurched over the rough farm road as he raced toward the highway. Jake knew every ranch, every building, and every piece of potential shelter for 50 miles in any direction. More importantly, he knew where the old Johnson storm cellar was located, a reinforced concrete bunker built during the 1960s, designed to withstand even the most powerful tornadoes. The problem was reaching it. The storm cellar was buried in a grove of mesquite trees about 300 yards off the highway, accessible only by an unmarked dirt road that most people would never notice. Jake had helped Old Man Johnson maintain it for years before Johnson passed away, and the new landowner had given Jake permission to use it during emergencies. As Jake reached Highway 287, he could see the Tesla clearly now, crawling along at maybe 20 miles per hour in the blinding conditions. The tornado was less than a half-mile away and closing fast, its massive funnel now clearly visible as it devoured everything in its path. Trees were being snapped like toothpicks, and Jake could hear the freight train roar of the wind even over his truck's engine. Jake floored his accelerator and pulled alongside the Tesla, honking his horn frantically and motioning for the driver to pull over. Through the rain-streaked windows, he could see a man inside, looking panicked and confused. Elon saw the pickup truck appear beside him and initially thought the driver was crazy for being out in these conditions. But when the farmer began gesturing urgently toward a barely visible dirt road leading into a grove of trees, Elon realized the man was trying to help. Jake rolled down his window despite the pelting hail and shouted over the storm's roar, "Follow me! Storm shelter! Now!" Without waiting for a response, Jake yanked his steering wheel hard right and bounced off the highway onto the dirt road. His truck's four-wheel drive system bit into the muddy ground as he powered toward the tree line. Behind him, he could hear the high-pitched whine of the Tesla's electric motors as the expensive car struggled to follow over the rough terrain. The tornado was now only a few hundred yards away, and its roar had become deafening. Jake could feel the air pressure dropping, making his ears pop. Debris was starting to rain down around them, pieces of sheet metal, tree branches, and chunks of hail the size of baseballs. Jake's truck bounced wildly over the rutted dirt road, but he knew exactly where he was going. The storm cellar was hidden among a cluster of mesquite trees, marked only by a small concrete pad and heavy steel doors set into the ground. He had helped Johnson install those doors 30 years ago, and they were built to withstand winds of over 250 miles per hour. Behind him, the Tesla was struggling with the rough terrain. Its low ground clearance meant it was scraping against rocks and ruts, and the car's sophisticated traction control system wasn't designed for this kind of off-road emergency driving. But Elon kept the accelerator pressed down, trusting the farmer's judgment even as tree branches scraped against his windows and mud splattered across his windshield. They reached the storm cellar with less than a minute to spare. Jake leaped out of his truck and ran to the concrete pad, his boots slipping on the wet surface as he grabbed the heavy steel handles. The cellar doors were designed to be opened from the inside during normal conditions, but Jake had installed external handles for emergencies exactly like this one. "Come on!" Jake shouted to Elon, who was climbing out of his battered Tesla. "We got maybe 30 seconds." Elon ran toward the storm cellar as Jake hauled open the heavy doors. The concrete steps led down into a reinforced bunker that was larger than Elon had expected, about 8 feet by 12 feet, with thick concrete walls and a curved ceiling designed to deflect debris. Emergency supplies lined shelves along one wall, water, canned food, flashlights, and a battery-powered radio. They tumbled down the stairs just as the tornado's outer edge reached the grove of trees. Jake slammed the heavy steel doors shut and threw the internal locking mechanism just as the world exploded into chaos above them. The sound was indescribable. Even through the thick concrete walls and steel doors, the tornado's roar was overwhelming, like standing inside a jet engine mixed with the sound of a freight train derailing. The entire bunker shook violently as debris hammered the doors and walls. Elon could hear what sounded like cars and trees being hurled through the air directly overhead. "Jesus," Elon whispered, pressing himself against the concrete wall as the bunker continued to shake. "That's an F3, maybe F4, Jake shouted over the noise, his experienced ear able to judge the tornado's intensity even from underground. "We'll be here for a few minutes while it passes." The violence above them continued for what felt like hours, but was probably only 3 or 4 minutes. Gradually, the roar began to fade as the tornado moved past their location, continuing its destructive path across the Texas landscape. When relative quiet finally returned, Jake cautiously unlatched the steel doors and pushed them open. What they saw when they emerged was a landscape transformed. The grove of mesquite trees had been completely stripped of leaves and branches, with several large trees uprooted entirely. Debris was scattered everywhere, pieces of buildings, vehicles, and personal belongings from farms and towns that had been in the tornado's path. Elon's Tesla was still there, but it was covered in mud and dented from hailstones. Several tree branches had fallen across the hood, and the windshield was cracked in multiple places. But it was intact and probably still drivable. Jake's pickup truck had also survived, though it now sported several new dents and had lost its rear windshield to flying debris. "Holy shit," Elon said, staring at the destruction around them. "You saved my life." Jake just nodded, surveying the damage with the stoic acceptance of someone who had lived through many storms. "That's what neighbors do out here. You okay?" "I'm fine, thanks to you." Elon extended his hand. "I'm Elon Musk." "Jake Williams," the farmer replied, shaking hands with a grip calloused from decades of hard work. "I know who you are. Saw you on the news talking about those rockets." "Jake, I can't thank you enough. If you hadn't pulled me off that highway, you'd be dead," Jake said matter-of-factly. "That twister took everything in its path. Your fancy car wouldn't have stood a chance in the open." They spent the next hour helping each other assess the damage to their vehicles and clearing debris from the dirt road. Jake's truck was still fully functional despite the cosmetic damage, but Elon's Tesla had several warning lights on the dashboard and a partially cracked windshield that would make highway driving dangerous. "I can call my people to come pick me up," Elon said, checking his phone as cellular service gradually returned to the area. "Nonsense," Jake replied. "My farm's only about 5 miles from here. You can wait there while we figure out how to get you back on the road safely." As they drove slowly through the storm-damaged landscape toward Jake's farm, Elon learned more about the man who had saved his life. Jake had been farming the same land for 40 years, raising cotton and cattle through droughts, floods, economic downturns, and countless storms. His wife, Mary, had passed away 3 years earlier from cancer, and his 2 adult children lived in distant cities, pursuing careers that had taken them far from the family farm. "It gets lonely out here sometimes," Jake admitted as they pulled into his driveway. "But this land has been good to me. My daddy farmed it before me, and his daddy before him." Jake's house was a modest ranch-style home surrounded by outbuildings and equipment that spoke to decades of careful maintenance and hard work. Despite the recent storm, everything was neat and well-organized. "Let me call my transportation team," Elon said as they entered Jake's kitchen. "I'll have someone here to pick me up within a few hours." "No rush," Jake replied, putting on a pot of coffee. "Storm like that probably took out power lines and blocked roads for miles around. Might take longer than you think to get anyone through." Jake was right. When Elon's assistant called back an hour later, she reported that the tornado had caused extensive damage across a 50-mile swath of Texas. Roads were blocked, power was out in multiple counties, and it would be at least 12 hours before any of Tesla's support vehicles could reach their location. "Looks like you're stuck with me for the night," Jake said with a smile when Elon relayed the news. "I've got a spare bedroom, and Mary always kept the freezer stocked in case of unexpected guests." That evening, over a dinner of grilled steaks and vegetables from Jake's garden, the 2 men talked about their vastly different lives. Jake was fascinated by Elon's work with electric vehicles and space exploration, while Elon was amazed by the depth of knowledge required to successfully farm in one of the harshest agricultural environments in America. "You know," Elon said as they sat on Jake's front porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, "I spend most of my time thinking about the future. Electric cars, sustainable energy, getting to Mars. But today reminded me how important it is to have people like you who understand the fundamentals of survival and taking care of each other." Jake chuckled. Well, I spend most of my time thinking about the present, whether it's going to rain, what the market price for cotton is going to be, whether that old tractor is going to make it through another season. But I have to admit, your vision of the future sounds pretty exciting. The next morning, Elon's transportation team arrived to find their boss helping Jake repair storm damage to one of his barns. They had been working together since sunrise, and both men were covered in dust and sweat. "Mr. Musk," his security chief said in obvious relief, "we were worried about you." "I was in the best possible hands," Elon replied, clapping Jake on the shoulder. "This man saved my life." As Elon prepared to leave, he pulled Jake aside. "Jake, I want to do something to thank you for what you did yesterday." "That's not necessary," Jake protested. "I just did what anyone would do." "But not everyone would do it. You risk your own life to save a complete stranger. That's the definition of heroism." Elon handed Jake a business card. "I'm going to have my people contact you about installing a comprehensive renewable energy system on your farm. Solar panels, battery storage, the works. Completely free of charge." Jake stared at the card. "Elon, that's too much." "I can't accept." "Yes, you can. And there's more. I want to create a scholarship program for rural students pursuing engineering and agriculture studies. I'd like to name it the Jake Williams Scholarship for Rural Innovation. Would you be okay with that?" Jake's eyes filled with tears. Mary always said that education was the key to everything. She would have loved that. 3 months later, Jake's farm was featured in Tesla's promotional materials as a showcase for renewable energy in agriculture. The solar panel installation had not only eliminated his electric bills, but was actually generating income by selling excess power back to the grid. More importantly, the Jake Williams Scholarship had already provided full college funding for 12 rural students across Texas. But perhaps most significantly, Jake and Elon had developed an unlikely friendship. Every few months, Elon would visit the farm, sometimes bringing engineers who were working on agricultural applications for Tesla's technology. And Jake had even visited SpaceX headquarters, where his practical wisdom about equipment maintenance and problem-solving had impressed the engineering teams. "You know what I learned that day?" Elon told a gathering of Tesla employees 6 months later, as he shared the story of the tornado and Jake's heroism. "Technology is important, innovation is crucial, but at the end of the day, what matters most is being willing to help your fellow human beings, even when it's dangerous or inconvenient." He paused, looking out at the assembled engineers and technicians. "Jake Williams didn't save me because I was famous or wealthy. He saved me because that's who he is, someone who doesn't leave people in danger when he has the power to help. That's the kind of character I want to see in everyone who works here." The story of the tornado rescue became legendary within Tesla and SpaceX. But Jake Williams never sought publicity for his actions. He continued farming his land, now powered by clean energy, and took quiet pride in knowing that his split-second decision during a deadly storm had not only saved a life, but had helped improve the lives of countless others through the scholarship program and renewable energy initiatives it had inspired. Because sometimes the most important moments in history happen not in boardrooms or laboratories, but on lonely highways during life-threatening storms, when ordinary people make extraordinary choices to help their fellow human beings.